The night sky over Smiljan split open with a scream of light. A thunderstorm rolled across the valley, the air trembling as if the heavens were forging something unseen. Inside a small farmhouse, a woman labored in candlelight, while thunder cracked so close it shook the windows. When the child came into the world, another bolt of lightning flashed, so bright it filled the room like daylight. The midwife gasped that the baby was born in the storm. The exhausted mother, Nikola Tesla, looked toward the glowing window and whispered that her son would be a child of light. Outside the rain fell hard, and the sky burned white. No one in the village slept that night, though none could have guessed that a current had just entered the world that would one day change the pulse of humanity. As a boy, Nikola Tesla was strange in ways that frightened people. He remembered entire pages of books after a single reading. He solved complex arithmetic in his head and drew mechanical designs in the dirt. But what truly set him apart were the flashes, bursts of light that filled his vision whenever he was excited or startled. Sometimes they came with sounds, colors, even shapes. He learned to control them, to turn them into images of machines that did not yet exist. His teacher scolded him for daydreaming, but in those daydreams he could see energy move, swirling like water, invisible but alive. He told his father that one day he would make that invisible power serve humankind. His father, a stern Orthodox priest, wanted him to join the church. His mother, who built mechanical contraptions from scraps, smiled and said nothing. Nikola later wrote that his mother was the true inventor, that he merely inherited her mind. He grew up counting his steps, breaths, and heartbeats, developing a near-obsessive precision about everything. When he was 17, cholera struck his town. He hovered between life and death for months. His father, desperate, promised that if he recovered, he would send him to the best engineering school in the world. Nikola clung to that promise. He survived, thin as a shadow, but filled with a fever that was no longer sickness. He devoured books on electricity, magnetism, and mathematics, scribbling notes by candlelight. When he enrolled at the Polytechnic Institute in Graz, he astonished professors by describing a motor that used alternating current instead of direct current. They laughed. Such a machine, they said, could never exist. Tesla's face went pale, then calm. He left class, pacing under the trees, until the rhythm of his footsteps matched the rhythm of the idea forming in his mind. A motor powered not by one current, but by two, alternating and creating a rotating magnetic field. Years later, he would say the idea came to him like a flash of lightning. That was how revelations arrived for him, instant, complete, as if downloaded from somewhere beyond thought. He graduated, restless, unsatisfied with theory. He worked in Budapest, then Paris, repairing electrical systems for the Continental Edison Company. Europe in the 1880s was buzzing with new inventions, dynamos, telegraphs, incandescent bulbs, but Tesla felt the world was only touching the surface of something vast. He dreamed of a global network of energy, invisible currents binding the planet together. His colleagues thought him brilliant but strange, given to long walks and sudden silences. One evening in a park in Budapest, he recited lines of Faust aloud, and then stopped, struck by a vision so powerful he nearly fell. He saw the alternating current motor, fully formed, spinning in the air before him. He drew diagrams in the dust with a stick. "See," he told his friend, "there it is, the future." 2 years later, he boarded a ship to America, carrying 4 cents, a few poems, and a letter of introduction to Thomas Edison. When he arrived in New York City, the skyline was a forest of smokestacks and telegraph wires. He walked down Broadway in a borrowed suit, tall, thin, with eyes that seemed to see through metal. The city crackled with energy and ambition. Within days, he found himself in Edison's cluttered workshop, surrounded by the smell of oil and ozone. Edison, practical and impatient, asked what the young man could do. "I can improve your machines," Tesla said simply. Edison laughed, but hired him. For months, Tesla worked 16 hours a day, redesigning Edison's generators, sleeping on the floor when he could no longer stand. Edison promised him $50,000 if he succeeded. When he finally presented the improved system, Edison joked, "You don't understand our American humor." There would be no payment. Tesla resigned that day. Pride wounded, but spirit unbroken, he took whatever work he could find, digging ditches for $2 a day, sketching circuits in his notebook during lunch breaks. Each shovel of dirt reminded him of the work still buried in his mind. In 1887, he rented a small workshop and began experimenting again. Using scraps of copper and iron, he built a prototype of his alternating current motor. When he demonstrated it to a group of engineers, the rotor spun silently and smoothly, powered by an unseen pulse. They stared, transfixed. Newspapers soon hailed him as the new genius of electricity. Investors followed, but the invention that would make Tesla famous also plunged him into the fiercest industrial battle of the age, the war of currents. Thomas Edison's direct current system was already spreading across America, lighting homes and factories. It was profitable, tangible, and under his control. Tesla's alternating current, on the other hand, threatened to transmit power across long distances cheaply and efficiently. When the entrepreneur George Westinghouse learned of Tesla's work, he invited him to Pittsburgh. They shook hands, and the alliance that would electrify the world was born. Edison fought back fiercely. He launched a public campaign claiming that alternating current was deadly. In grotesque demonstrations, he electrocuted dogs, horses, even an elephant to prove his point. The press called it a battle of giants, Edison versus Tesla, DC versus AC. Tesla ignored the spectacle. He believed science would speak louder than fear. In 1983, at the Chicago World's Fair, the proof came. Westinghouse won the contract to light the entire exposition using Tesla's alternating current system. When the fair opened, 100,000 bulbs blazed to life, bathing the night in white light. Crowds gasped. Electricity, once a curiosity, became magic. Tesla walked among the glowing pavilions, holding a glass tube that shone in his hand without wires. He let the current flow through his body into the ground, smiling calmly as arcs of light danced around him. Reporters called him the Wizard of the West. Tesla simply said, "The present is theirs. The future, for which I really worked, is mine." 2 years later, Tesla's designs made possible one of humanity's greatest engineering feats, harnessing Niagara Falls. The dream of turning that immense natural power into electricity had captivated minds for centuries. Using Tesla's AC system, engineers built turbines that captured the roar of the falls and sent current 20 miles to Buffalo, New York. When the first lights flickered on, people cheered. Tesla stood quietly by the river, watching the water thunder past. "Now I have seen my ideals realized," he said softly. "The Niagara Power Plant is my monument." But monuments never lasted long for Tesla. His mind always moved beyond the next horizon. Having mastered the flow of energy through wires, he turned to a greater mystery, energy through the air. By 1899, he was in Colorado Springs, where the thin air and open plains offered space for experiments too dangerous for any city. His laboratory stood on a lonely hill, filled with towering coils and copper spheres. He built transformers that crackled with millions of volts. At night, locals saw lightning burst from the roof, sometimes more than 100 feet long. The ground trembled. Cows miles away were knocked to their knees. Tesla recorded everything in precise, elegant handwriting. He believed he had discovered that the Earth itself could resonate electrically, that signals could travel not just through the air, but through the planet. He called it the resonance of the Earth. The Earth, he wrote, responds to electrical vibration like a bell struck by a hammer. He began to dream of a world where power and information could be transmitted wirelessly anywhere on Earth. To him, it wasn't fantasy, but engineering on a planetary scale. He returned to New York certain he could build a system to do it. What he needed was a backer. He found one in J.P. Morgan, the most powerful financier in America. Tesla described his plan with quiet conviction, a global wireless network that would send messages, images, and energy across the world. Morgan, intrigued and cautious, agreed to fund a demonstration. Construction began on Long Island in 1901. The structure rose like a wooden cathedral topped with a copper dome, Wardenclyffe Tower, Tesla's monument to the dream of universal connection.
He still gave lectures now and then, standing tall in his immaculate suit, his voice calm and hypnotic as he described invisible forces with the certainty of a prophet. Crowds packed auditoriums just to watch him call lightning from metal spheres or command wireless lamps to glow from across the room. He spoke of cosmic rays, of tapping energy directly from space itself. "We are whirling through endless space," he told them, "with an inconceivable speed. Everything is spinning, everything is moving, everywhere is energy. There must be some way of availing ourselves of this energy more directly." Many dismissed it as science fiction. Others saw in his eyes a truth that language could not yet express. But the world was moving in other directions. The 20th century was becoming a century of practical men. Bankers, industrialists, engineers who counted efficiency before vision. Tesla's inventions were everywhere, yet his name was fading from the patents that powered modern life. Radio, which he had demonstrated years before Guglielmo Marconi, was credited to others. When the U.S. Supreme Court later ruled that Tesla's patents were indeed the foundation of radio technology, it was too late for him to benefit. He was already a forgotten man, living in a hotel room, feeding pigeons from his window. All that was great in the past was ridiculed, condemned, combated, suppressed, only to emerge all the more powerfully, all the more triumphantly from the struggle, he wrote. In those quiet years, he developed an attachment to one white pigeon that visited him daily. He claimed to understand her thoughts, that she came to him when he called. Once, when she was ill, he said a light shone from her eyes brighter than any he had ever produced in his laboratory. "When she died," Tesla later told a journalist, "something went out of my life." By then he had no family, no fortune, and few friends. His brilliance had become a private storm, flashing unseen in a room filled with blueprints and fading notebooks. Yet his mind never stopped racing. He wrote of an invention he called the Teleforce, a defensive beam that could end war by making aggression impossible. He sent proposals to governments, none of which came to fruition. Some thought it delusion, others feared it was too real. In 1917, the American Institute of Electrical Engineers awarded him their highest honor, the Edison Medal, a bitter irony given his long rivalry with Edison. Tesla accepted it reluctantly, standing stiffly under the applause. He thanked them, but added that the world had yet to see his greatest work. Afterward, he walked home through the rain alone, lightning flickering faintly on the horizon. His life had become a pattern of such moments, recognition arriving decades too late, solitude following triumph. The First World War, then the Great Depression, swept through the world he had once imagined electric and free. Wardenclyffe Tower was dismantled and sold for scrap to pay debts. Tesla, now in his 60s, moved from one hotel to another, always leaving behind unpaid bills and bundles of unread manuscripts. His rooms were stacked with boxes of notes, some filled with calculations, others with cryptic sketches and ideas written in languages only he seemed to understand. Maids complained of sparks from strange devices under his bed. He assured them it was only harmless static experiments. He was planning, he said, something that would render obsolete all methods of transportation known today. Few believed him, but among his scattered papers were diagrams of vertical takeoff craft powered by electric propulsion, machines eerily similar to what would later be called UFOs. Reporters still sought him out occasionally, drawn by the legend of the mad genius. In 1934, at age 78, he appeared in a newspaper interview claiming he had designed a death ray that could destroy fleets of aircraft hundreds of miles away. The headline called it Tesla's secret invention that could end war. Governments in the US, the Soviet Union, and Europe quietly sent envoys to inquire. None found anything conclusive. Tesla hinted that the key lay in resonance, an alignment of natural vibrations that could magnify energy without limit. If you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, then you would have the key to the universe, he said cryptically. The world dismissed it as the eccentric ramblings of an old man. Yet decades later, physicists studying electromagnetic resonance would find eerie echoes of Tesla's forgotten theories. In his final decade, he became a ghost moving through the corridors of the New Yorker hotel, wearing a black suit, feeding pigeons in Bryant Park. Bellboys whispered stories of lights flickering when he passed, of static charging doorknobs in his wake. He continued writing letters to industrialists and presidents, proposing global systems of power transmission, radar, and energy weapons. Most went unanswered. But even in poverty, he refused charity. "I am not a man who asks for help," he once told a reporter. "I am a man who gives it." In January of 1943, a maid entered his room after he had failed to emerge for 2 days. Tesla lay still on the bed, hands folded, a faint smile on his lips. He was 86. The police found dozens of boxes of papers, sealed envelopes, and a black notebook filled with dense handwriting and symbols. The Office of Alien Property seized everything within hours. The government declared it routine, but the contents were never made public in full. Some documents were eventually released, others vanished into classified archives. Rumors spread that Tesla's missing papers contained designs for limitless wireless energy, anti-gravity devices, even a method to manipulate time. None of it could be proven, but the legend of the lost notebook began that day. The idea that somewhere, in those missing pages, lay the blueprint for the future we never built. After his death, his pigeons continued to gather at the hotel window for weeks. The city moved on, its lights burning with the current he had dreamed of long before they were possible. In time, his name returned. Engineers rediscovered his patents, his equations, his intuitions that predicted radio, radar, and robotics decades ahead of anyone else. His alternating current system became the foundation of the modern electric grid. His experiments with resonance became precursors to wireless transmission, medical imaging, and communication satellites. Every time a phone connects, a transformer hums, or a lightning storm cuts across the night, his unseen hand seems to flicker through the world. But the mystery of the lost notebook remains the pulse beneath his legend. In 1976, a historian at the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade uncovered a series of coded diagrams labeled only "radiant energy process." The handwriting matched Tesla's. The notes described a system of transmitting power through the Earth's ionosphere using ultra-low frequency resonance. It was an early draft of the Wardenclyffe principle, but far more advanced. It hinted that Tesla had achieved small-scale transmission without wires shortly before his funding was cut. Some pages referred to interfering currents and field feedback loops, concepts resembling modern plasma physics. Others contained pure speculation, references to dimensional fields and longitudinal waves. The curator who catalogued the papers later remarked, "Tesla was writing about ideas we still do not have the language for." In the 1980s, a rumor circulated among engineers at Los Alamos that a government experiment known as Project Rainbow had been based on Tesla's unpublished research, an attempt to bend electromagnetic fields around ships to render them invisible. The story, later known as the Philadelphia experiment, entered conspiracy lore. There is no proof Tesla was involved, though his letters to the Navy from 1942 mention a defensive field resonance system. Whether myth or truth, it reflected the strange persistence of his imagination. Everything he dreamed seemed to find an echo somewhere in the real world. In modern laboratories, physicists studying wireless energy transfer, magnetic levitation, and high-frequency plasma propulsion still cite Tesla's work. His designs for rotating magnetic fields form the basis of electric motors that power everything from vacuum cleaners to Mars rovers. His early experiments with remote control anticipated drones and robotics. Even the concept of the smartphone, instant communication across distance, was described by Tesla in a 1909 interview. When wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain capable of sending messages instantly from one end to another. Reading those words today feels like hearing the future echoing backwards. But what of the notebook itself, the one missing after his death? Some researchers believe it was simply misplaced in the confusion, others that it was confiscated and remains classified. Some insist it was recovered by a relative and later donated anonymously to a private collection. One fragment surfaced in the 1990s, a single page written in Tesla's hand bearing a spiral of equations around the phrase, "Energy is everywhere, and when the harmony is right, it sings." The handwriting was verified, though its meaning remains unclear. Scholars debate whether it was poetic metaphor or literal formula. Either way, it seemed to encapsulate Tesla's entire philosophy that energy, matter, and spirit are aspects of the same vibration, waiting only for the right resonance to reveal their unity. Over time, his image transformed from forgotten inventor to mythic prophet of the electric age. Filmmakers and novelists portrayed him as a man out of time.
In a quiet laboratory on the edge of the Nevada desert, a young physicist stands before a humming coil, the air around it faintly blue with corona discharge. On the table lies a reproduction of Tesla's notes, the paper yellowed, the handwriting looping like electric current itself. The experiment is small, an attempt to reproduce a wireless energy pulse through tuned resonance. When the switch flips, the coil sings, and a bulb across the room flickers to life without wires. The scientist exhales slowly. In that fragile glow, a century folds into itself. Across time, Tesla's vision blinks awake again. It is said that geniuses belong less to their own century than to the next. Tesla was perhaps the most displaced of them all, living in an era powered by steam while dreaming in frequencies that would shape the digital world. He foresaw global communication networks, drones, self-propelled machines, renewable energy, even artificial intelligence. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, he once said, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries. To him, science and spirit were not opposites, but harmonics of the same vibration. The equations were poetry, the machinery a prayer written in copper and light. The lost notebook has become less an artifact than a mythic mirror. It reflects what humanity most longs for, the belief that knowledge, pure, radiant, liberating, can exist beyond greed or limitation. Somewhere in those vanished pages, people imagine a secret that could free the world from scarcity, end dependence on fossil fuels, and dissolve the boundaries between nations. Whether such a secret ever existed matters less than the fact that Tesla's dream still electrifies the imagination. The legend itself has power. It drives new generations to experiment, to question, to wonder if perhaps the universe hides its answers in frequencies we've not yet tuned to hear. Decades after his death, the FBI released a declassified summary of his seized papers. Most were routine, calculations, correspondence, fragments of unfinished patents, but one note caught historians' attention. It referenced energy standing waves within the planet's crust and described Earth as a conductor of limitless potential. The phrasing was identical to Tesla's earlier Colorado Springs journals, suggesting that even in his final years, he had not abandoned his dream of global wireless transmission. Some physicists today studying Schumann resonances, the natural electromagnetic pulses of the Earth, realize they are working on phenomena Tesla had already described in principle. He was, as always, just a century early. There are stories of strange coincidences surrounding his legacy. Engineers claim that during high-frequency experiments, their instruments sometimes emit signals corresponding to Tesla's old oscillator patterns. Amateur radio operators have reported faint transmissions repeating his known frequencies, like a whisper from the past.
Rational minds dismiss it as atmospheric noise. Others find in it a kind of poetic justice, that a man who dreamed of transmitting through the very air might have left a signature resonance still echoing there. As one physicist put it, if energy cannot be destroyed, perhaps neither can be genius. In cities across the world, monuments now stand in his honor. In Belgrade, a bronze Tesla gazes skyward, a book in one hand, a lightning bolt in the other. In Niagara Falls, the sculpted figure faces the roaring water he once tamed. In Colorado Springs, the site of his laboratory has become a pilgrimage for scientists and dreamers alike. Visitors say that during storms, lightning still seems to strike unnaturally often above that hill. They imagine Tesla's spirit guiding the arcs, smiling at the resonance between heaven and earth. Yet even with all the tributes, there remains a certain melancholy to his legacy, a reminder of how easily vision can outpace its age. The notebooks that survived reveal not just scientific brilliance, but loneliness, hope, and faith in humanity's potential. Let the future tell the truth. The present is theirs. The future, for which I really worked, is mine. And indeed, the future seems to be catching up at last. His alternating current powers cities. His induction motors drive electric cars. His wireless theories underpin Wi-Fi and resonance charging. The name Tesla, once forgotten, now blazes across highways and headlines, a symbol of innovation, speed, and audacity. The man who once could not afford his hotel bill has become the emblem of the electric age. But the most haunting part of his story is not the inventions that succeeded, it is the one that slipped through time, the dream of limitless wireless power. Even now, scientists and entrepreneurs are chasing it again. Energy beamed through the air, harvested from the ionosphere, distributed without wires or waste. Each new breakthrough sounds like an echo from Wardenclyffe. Satellites now orbit Earth, transmitting data and energy across oceans, and the world Tesla imagined, a globe wrapped in invisible connections, has finally come to pass. The only difference is that the system he dreamed would be free has become a marketplace of networks and codes. Perhaps that is the irony of progress. Every vision eventually meets commerce. Every profit becomes a brand. Still, in quiet moments, when lightning splits the sky or the hum of a transformer rises in the distance, it is easy to imagine Tesla's voice carried within it. To him, electricity was never just power, it was life itself, a pulse connecting all matter. He once said he could feel the earth trembling with unseen currents. When he walked barefoot on the ground during storms, he felt those vibrations coursing through him like blood. "We are conductors of the cosmic music," he wrote. "When our hearts are in tune, the universe plays through us." Such lines, half physics, half prayer, now read like the poetry of a man who had seen too far. Somewhere, perhaps locked away in an archive or lost to fire, the notebook remains. Those who have glimpsed references to it describe intricate drawings, spirals, geometric grids, and annotations in several languages. One page, according to a museum archivist, contained a single sentence underlined twice. To understand energy is to understand story. It is a curious phrase, but maybe that was his final message, that the universe itself is a story told through energy. Each pulse a word, each wave a sentence. Every light bulb, every radio signal, every heartbeat is part of that cosmic narrative. Tesla spent his life trying to read it, to speak it back to the world in the language of invention. In that sense, the Lost Notebook was never just a collection of formulas, it was a philosophy of perception. Tesla saw stories where others saw currents. To him, a machine was not a tool, but a metaphor for connection, a bridge between imagination and reality. Every experiment was an act of translation, turning invisible forces into visible light. "The day science and art unite," he wrote once in the margin of a journal, "humanity will know its true power." Those words, forgotten in an archive, now sound like prophecy. Our world,
woven from data, powered by electricity, illuminated by wireless networks, is the union he foresaw. We are, in many ways, living inside his imagination. As the century advances, more pieces of his puzzle emerge. In quantum laboratories, scientists manipulate energy fields that behave as Tesla predicted, waves that can be guided, amplified, or entangled across distance. In renewable energy research, engineers chase the dream of tapping natural resonance to produce limitless clean power. And in digital storytelling, filmmakers and creators use the very technologies he envisioned, global wireless transmission of voice, image, and emotion, to tell stories of wonder, discovery, and hope. In every glowing screen, there is a spark of Tesla's light. He once said that invention is the most intense form of imagination. To imagine something clearly enough, he believed, was to make it real. In that conviction lay both his genius and his tragedy. The world rarely catches up to such clarity. But over time, the gap narrows. The notebook, real or mythical, continues to challenge the world to see beyond limits, to believe that reality itself is malleable, waiting to be retuned. Tesla's life was proof that the border between science and poetry, electricity and soul, is not a line, but a current. In the end, perhaps the lost notebook was never meant to be found. Perhaps it was an unfinished symphony, a question left open so that future generations would have something to chase. The formulas, the sketches, the cryptic phrases, they were the scaffolding of a dream meant to be completed by others. Every time a young inventor lights a coil, every time a researcher whispers his name before an experiment, that current flows again. Tesla's energy